Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 185 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have my really good friend, Andy Kite, on the podcast. This is one of the more fun conversations that I have had in a long time. It was a real blast and treat to be able to talk to Andy. Andy shares his recent experience of taking a sabbatical from practicing law, went on a trip with his wife to Germany and to Africa, and took about 6 months away from the practice. And Andy shares why he did that, how he made that happen, how he was able to close up his practice and now reopen his practice since coming back into the practice of law. Some of the amazing lessons that he learned from this. And if you are feeling burned out with the law, if you are thinking about taking a break from the law because you'd like to go on an adventure to try something new, great information, a great kind of guide for how to think about this and make this a reality. Even if you're not thinking about walking away from the practice of law for a couple of days or longer, really a lot of good life lessons that Andy shares from his experience of taking this brief hiatus from practice. So really fun conversation with Andy. He also shares his recent experience at the Freedom Fighter Summit and some of the takeaways that he got from attending that event, kickstarting his kind of coming back into practicing. So just a blast of a conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. It's going to be hard to do that because I really enjoyed the conversation, but hope you guys like this one. Well, I'm stoked. I am totally full of energy right now because I have my great friend and amazing lawyer, Andy Kite, here with me today to talk about just some fun stuff, but also about why it's important to take a break from practicing law. But practicing law is tough. It is a demanding profession. And I feel like many of us can feel trapped in the profession. Like you've got all these law school loans hanging over your head. You've got all of this time that you have put in, and it feels like literally the only exit strategy is to just kind of like, do grunt work for 30 years, kind of figure out some sort of retirement plan. And that's the way out of the law. And Andy has kind of flipped that paradigm, I would say, somewhat on its head. So super excited to talk about that, Andy, and have you on the podcast.
Jake, it is an honor and a pleasure.
Pumped about it. You kind of kicking things off. I think I'd sent you over this morning. Recently, we got to kind of share the experience of the inaugural Freedom Fighter Summit. And it was, I was going into this thing, I had everything like planned, I was getting prepped for the morning. And Andy, I have been like on Andy, trying to get Andy to come to the summit, be blowing up his phone. I think he was contemplating taking out like a harassing call charge, and would have been justified in doing that. But morning of the summit, Thursday morning, I get a text from Andy like, "Is there still a seat available?" And I'm not kidding you, that just like totally made my day. And like the energy from getting that text really was like the moment of like, man, this is just going to be such an incredible day. It gave like such a great kickstart to the day. So truly like the last sign up person of the summit. And just give us your 2 cents on this, Andy.
Yeah. So Jake, when you were campaigning, lobbying to have me there, it's funny because it was a busy few weeks for me. And, I kept thinking, boy, what is Jake what is Jake going to be selling at this Freedom Fighters conference? And I mean, if you know Jake, the energy and intensity and just genuine, just love for whatever it is that he's talking about can be very clear, right? And it's funny because I didn't really know what to expect going into the summit, and I had Jake had been you'd been talking about it for a while, and I still didn't know what to expect even after
I think that was a pretty general sense of things, was that I heard that from a lot of people, just didn't know what to expect going into this. And some of that, as we talked about, like, was very much intentional to kind of promote like this idea of being present. Some of it was to kind of like create a little bit of like a lore about what is going on. But I think that was a pretty general sense of like, what's going to happen here. I think even some of the speakers, honestly, were like, what is this thing all about? So,
well, Jake, you got to have a little bit of strategic ambiguity, in any practice of law, whether you're dealing with DAs or anything. No, but it was, to me, really different than my expectations. And kind of going into it, I was talking with my wife the night before, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, should I go to this thing or should I not go to this thing? And Karen looked over at me and she said, well, tell me about it. What is it? And I told her, what I knew, and she said, well, that sounds like it'd be really good. That sounds like it'd be really good for you to go. I was like, yeah, well, I don't know. And it's expensive. It's money.
Yeah, for sure. Expensive in terms of money, expensive in terms of time.
Well, and on a 2 days of a work week, even though it's judges conference, still that's 2 days.
Yeah.
Jake, we were just talking about the laptop I'm working on being the same laptop that I took the bar in, and then I took my 1L law school exams on. So, I am loath to spend money.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything more than $500 is just like, oh my goodness. And it's really funny. She told me, I just from what you said, it sounds like one of those things that you're going to tell me that this was worth it when you come back. And, I was driving on the way back the first night on the way back home. We live close to here. And she was like, well, was it worth it? I'm like, look, if they came back today and said, we're not having a second day, I'd say it's still worth it. It was incredible. Awesome. It was incredible. I think just there's a lot that I got out of it, but I think it's like a shot in the arm. It was just like, it wasn't, it's just a catalyst, I'm already in that kind of driven subset, of attorneys that really want to do something.
Yes. I think that was there was a great group of people there. I think that really had a lot to do with it. The group of the speakers were awesome, but I honestly think like just the group of attendees, it was a very, I would say, like-minded, hungry group. And that was really contagious to be around that energy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that was one of the biggest parts. Yeah. Was getting to meet a lot of these guys and gals who have a similar motivations, right? For why they do what they do and what they want to do with it.
If you had any key takeaways or key lessons from the summit, what if anything kind of stands out?
There were so many things that stood out. I think one of the things that I really liked was being able to, like we talked about, just network. And I know kind of, network is that term that's used so often, but to really make relationships and build relationships with other attorneys who are like-minded. That was really good. But I think coming from the speakers, there were so many gems. Since the summit, I have had my notebook from the summit has not left my desk. In fact, it's been open. And whenever I've had an intake since then, I just flip to my intake notes. So where are they? Ah, yes, Chaz's intake notes. And every time I learned something. If I'm sitting here and have nothing to do, I'll go back and just start, reading through the notes that I made. I mean, that are just so valuable to me. But I think one of the things that really sticks out in my head as a lesson, this is kind of one of those paradigm shifting moments that I'm like sitting back in my chair, like, oh wow, is and there was two speakers who touched on this. Fail often.
Yes. Yeah.
Winners lose the most. And
Yes.
those were that was Colin Brady and then James Davis.
Yeah.
And that was just paradigm shifting for me. Win or lose often, because see, I can't even bring myself to say it. I want to say win often, not lose often.
Yeah.
That's so.
I feel like that was definitely a theme, and the way that it was expressed and some of the examples that were given by multiple speakers was really powerful. I had a follow-up conversation recently with James Davis, and he's like, one thing that I would consider for next year in terms of like a topic for a talk would be, 10 mistakes that I've made in practice. And I was like, immediately I was like, that's it. Like, that's where I'm gonna go next year, because basically, I talked about, having a building a practice around kind of like learns through the fails, right? Like, this constant 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I think that the 1 step back is where the real growth happened. Like, it's great to take the 2 steps forward, but the 1 step back is where most of the, true value has come in, because it's kind of like when you learn what caused that 1 step back, it's like, okay, well, we're going to eliminate that as a, kind of roadblock moving forward. So that was something I was like immediately like, yes, that's a great, thing to frame a conversation around. But yeah, I mean, the group of lawyers was just something that was very special. And to your like networking point, I feel like generally speaking, when I've gone to networking events, you go meet somebody, you give them your card, you have, 10 to 15 minute conversation. It's great conversation, but there's really no intention of continuing the conversation. And that's one thing that I'm really hopeful that we can build out of this through the, kind of through the website and discussion forum that we have, is more of a long-term, kind of connection, right? Like a true, like sustained relationship, as opposed to that, like, let's exchange business cards and, maybe 5 years down the road, I'll think of you, or something, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just felt much more personal.
Absolutely. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about getting involved in these different things that you're doing through Freedom Fighters, and just like going out and grabbing lunch with guys that I met.
For sure.
and no, I've already, I mean, seriously, since then, I mean, I've already been able to help out somebody that I met there with a referral, and it's just been really nice.
That's awesome.
It's been really nice to know also that, okay, all right, I know somebody in Orange County now.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know anybody in Orange County before.
No, for sure. I mean, it's a huge thing to have that kind of like cross the state network, and just again, just the similar mindset. And I feel like, the vulnerability of the group was really strong in terms of sharing openly. There was conversations that I had with several local attorneys that I have known for years that had never happened before that moment. And it was just kind of like, this is so bizarre. Like, why did it take this kind of a meeting for
that happened to me too, man. I mean, I don't know what it was. There's something in the atmosphere, something that in that fog machine that he pumped through there. It was really, I mean, everyone was so open, vulnerable, and just real.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, everyone was real, and everyone's cards were on the table, and it was really a beautiful thing. I got so much out of it. And I mean, I could go down the list. I mean, talking about like the theme of leadership, right? With Ali Ghaffari and General Whistler, leadership as relationship. Whoa. Yeah. Leadership as, kind of like, leadership is character and action. General Whistler was really hammering that, and really sitting back and not just listening to it, but like really taking that in. Like, what does that mean? And if I internalize it,
Yes.
how is this going to affect my practice?
Yes.
How's this going to affect everything, right? My family.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. No, there was a lot of things that really applied, maybe almost like even primarily outside of the practice of law.
Yeah.
It was, practice improvement was front and center, but life improvement, I think, is if people's lives improved, that's the bigger win. Then and I think there's a lot of correlation between your practice and the rest of it's who we are as lawyers, as like a part of our identity. So I mean, it's hard to kind of separate that, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, is this really, beyond just having a impact on your bottom line, having an impact on your daily life health? I mean, it just is so valuable beyond the courtroom.
And a better man or woman is going to be a better attorney,
yes.
Right?
I think that's totally true. Yeah.
And so I think that was really good that, it wasn't yet. It was really great. And it was amazing having somebody there, to help with the NHTSA clues and the HGN tests and, going through all those things. But I mean, the things that I really took away from that, not really necessarily specific to the practice of law.
Yes.
But rather with motivations and like deeply asking myself, why do I do what I do? Which is very helpful as an attorney to ask that question. Why do I practice law? But also why, thinking critically about, why am I the husband that I am? Why am I the community member that I am? Et cetera. Really getting down to those deep motivations was really healthy. It's really cool. I couldn't say enough good things about it.
No, that's awesome. And I think, in terms of like having that time, that 2-day time of reflection, that in and of itself is just like such a good thing to kind of put regularly into your schedule. And I'll use that as kind of like the segue into the main part of our conversation, which is basically, when you have this kind of like drive or motivation or feeling that, hey, I need to go try this new this new career path. I want to go see the world for a little bit. Or on the flip side, I'm just not feeling it in the practice of law. Like I'm getting burned out. I'm dealing with the same cases. Repeat client. Like just the grind of being in district court is weighing on me. Again, I think it's really important from a mental health standpoint, from, an avoidance of kind of buffering through the wrong, resources, whether that's, technology or drugs, whatever it might be. I think it's really important for us to have that, feeling that we could step back. We're not, slaves to our job. And there's really nobody that's lived this out better that I know of in the practice of law than you, Andy. And I just kind of want to have you talk a little bit about, kind of your recent sabbatical from the law, really beginning with like what prompted that? Like why was there this kind of drive to go kind of do something outside of practicing?
Yeah, for me, you go into any district courtroom, right? And you go into the lawyer's room in the back, or you sit, behind the bench with a bunch of lawyers, and you speak with 5 lawyers. You're going to talk to 4 of them who are going to say they're burnout.
Yes.
Or, either, oh man, I'm wanting to do something else, or wish I did something else, yada, yada. And that was never me.
Yeah, it wasn't. No, and that's part of the interest on my end, is because you always seemed so happy and excited and kind of like interested in the law, like that there was never that kind of like burnout motivation. So that was definitely my sense of things.
No, I think I'm in sometimes I feel like I'm in the minority because I really love what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love what I do, and believe it or not, I know some lawyers, it really raises their eyebrows when I say this, but I really like most of my clients,
Yeah.
a lot of my clients,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, but that wasn't the thing. It wasn't that I had just had enough. I need a break. But at the same time, I think it was really good that I took that break. I think it's incredibly good that I took that break, and I would recommend for anybody who is feeling burnt out to take that time to step aside. But really, what happened for me, I had always wanted to travel, to go overseas. And I had gone overseas for a little bit here and there, a couple short, week trips. I spent a summer over in Norway, back in between undergrad and law school. But never really anything really substantial. And my wife, Karen, hadn't either. And we got married while I was in law school, and I went straight from well, I was what do they call it? K through JD, straight from kindergarten
Yes.
through bar exam.
Yep.
And then as soon as I get out, I get a job up here. I worked with a firm doing some civil stuff for about 8 months. Said it wasn't for me. Went straight into my own thing, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and knowing nothing. And just took court-appointed cases for years and built up that level of understanding of how to do things, right, how to practice law. And it got to the point where it was me. I had a solo practice with a really, really good, competent legal assistant who was fantastic and who did a wonderful job. And I had taken on a lot of cases, both court appointed and private cases. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if I could ever do it without a really good legal assistant who I can trust. And it just so happened that the state of North Carolina ended up offering her a job that she could not have turned down. It was a really good offer. So she went to go work for the state, and here I was, right? Like, oh no.
That is terrifying.
It was kind of like a nightmare scenario in some ways. But Karen and I, my wife and I, were talking about it, and seeing crises like that as opportunities.
Yes.
Right? You have to see a crisis like that as an opportunity, because that's what every crisis is, an opportunity. And that can be said in this kind of like trite kind of, oh, every crisis is an opportunity. That sounds like, something that might be, crocheted on grandma's cushion. But it really is. And so really we were looking for the opportunity in the crisis. And, I ended up getting someone who would help me out, kind of short term, for a number of months, just for me to get my feet underneath me. And that was a blessing. That was amazing. But we were thinking, you know what, maybe this is a really good opportunity for us to just switch things up, for us to do something different. I love what I'm doing. I can always come back to what I'm doing. The business is still here. I'm back. But we saw that, wait a sec. I see an opportunity opening for something that we've always wanted to do. And at that time we had saved up the money, to where it wasn't going to be a burden financially. So really we talked about it. And at first it was this, especially, Karen, I'm slowly over the years, I've gotten her into kind of, thinking a little bit like me, just through osmosis, just, living with me. She, like, I'll say something audacious and it's not what it used to be. Like, what?
Are you crazy?
It's like, okay, because she's been through that enough of me, putting out an audacious idea. And she's she's been so patient and so kind with me over the years in that regard. But she's like, all right, let's see if this is realistic, because she's always the one who kind of keeps my feet on the ground,
Yeah.
saying that's a crazy idea. Let's see if this is realistic. And really going through kind of just crunching the ballpark numbers of how much we would need to spend, how much we would be able to live off of.
Did you
and
immediately
such
have
as
like a
that.
travel destination in mind?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah,
Absolutely not. And everything was seat of the pants. Every single thing was completely seat of the pants.
because I would imagine like some of those expenses would vary from like, potentially depending on where you're planning to go. So like what
Absolutely.
what drove it in the direction of Africa?
Yeah. So, man, it is a long story. It is a long story. It would take me hours to tell, but so, man, where do I even start? So my wife speaks a little bit of German. Her family speaks German. Her parents, her family, whole family before she was born lived in Austria, and so this was 4 or 5 years ago, actually before COVID. I thought, well, I really want to. I always have to have a project. I want to learn another language, so I want to learn German with you. Let's help each other. I want
Yeah.
to learn German, and I got a few months into it, and it beat me up.
It's not a very beautiful language.
It beat me up. Now I think it's a beautiful language. That's just me. I think the aesthetics of it are great, but the verb conjugations are not beautiful.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have 3 genders, and how do you know if a chair is masculine or feminine or neuter? And it is so complicated and so confusing. Other people might think differently, but it beat me up. And my confidence took a hit. And I was just like, man, I can't even learn German. I just felt so disheartened. So I went to Google like a crazy person, and I typed in, what are the easiest languages for English speakers to learn? And there was like Dutch, there was like 5 dialects, there's like 8 dialects of Dutch and Indonesian, and then Afrikaans. I'm like, oh, that sounds exotic. Okay, I'll learn that. And so that was 4 or 5 years ago, before COVID, so that I started trying to learn that. And so I've been working on that for years, because I always have to have a project. And I wanted to boost my own confidence, so I got to a pretty decent proficiency in the Afrikaans language. And so naturally I gotta go to South Africa. Of course, it's the only place in the world where it's well, not the only place, but it's the place where
the place, yeah.
From. And if you want to learn a language, you cannot just learn from online and other things. Like you have to really
you gotta go.
And there's only so much of that you can do in Western North Carolina, although there are South Africans of the yin yang up here, I found. So we said that's going to be on our list. All right, we had 2 places that were on our list that were non-negotiable. One was Germany. Karen really wanted to go to Germany. She had been there before. She had friends over there. And then I wanted to go to South Africa. So we said, we're going to go to South Africa and we're going to go to Germany. And like really what we did was we just found the cheapest one-way ticket that we could find to South Africa. And we bought it. And we went. And that was a big deal. I mean, it was a lot of preparation and winding down a practice, if you've never done that before, is an undertaking, to say the least. I mean, it was really something else to wind down the practice. I mean, that took me over a year.
Yeah, that is a
And
lot of work. Yeah, I mean, and so that again, I think that that's one of those things where most people would think to themselves, this is just going to be too much. Like, this is too big of a hurdle to get through. So again, I mean, you've got a ton of court appointed work, private
yeah,
clients. I mean, these things can go on for months, if not years. So it's the exit strategy, if you're solo, is tough. Like, that is a difficult thing to logistically think through. So you got to be committed early on and be like, the game plan is to be out by, 8 months from now or 12 months from now, whatever it might be. But again, the planning element of it, while it is a enormous undertaking, you've proved is doable. I think that's kind of what I want to make sure that we're communicating, is like, this is a viable option.
yeah, it is absolutely viable, absolutely doable, and you just have to be flexible with your plans. When are
Yeah.
we going to leave? Because things happen in life.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
we had to. We were actually originally planning to leave in October or November of last year,
Yeah.
and that had to be put back for a lot of reasons. One of which was some of my wife's health issues had to be pushed back all the way to March of the next year. And during that time, I had already gotten out of a lot of my cases, and so I had to work with what I had. And it was looking back, again, like I said about opportunities, um, that was a really good opportunity for me to step back after being just go, 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 go 80-hour work week
Yeah.
for the longest time. And I got a call coming. I apologize. Um, I'll call them back. But um, after doing those 80-hour work weeks for so long, after really being nose to the grindstone for so long, having those months where I'm winding down and where towards the end where I wasn't in court as much as I was previously. I think it was really healthy, really, really healthy and good for me to be able to step back and to know what to do with myself with
Yes.
free time.
Yeah. I feel like that was probably a great transitionary period, over a very long period of time, but like transitionary period into doing something completely different. Like, I think it would be difficult to just, have like this ridiculous amount of cases at all various stages and then just step away from that, which is what you potentially might do as an associate in a firm, if you're, transitioning to a different career altogether, or wanting to take a sabbatical. Having that longer period where it's just like, life is different than it was 12 months ago, even before going on this trip. Like, change it, like the flexibility in the mind, I think, was probably higher flexibility at that point.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. Flexibility in the mind. And it was really funny though, during that time and when I was stepping away and after I actually, got to that point where I was telling people what was going on, telling district attorneys, judges, clerks,
I remember
hey,
you telling me
here's
that, and I was
why.
pretty shocked. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, "Whoa, Andy," because you just again seemed like you're having so much fun in the courtroom, and so there would be a lot of people that would tell me that, and I'd be like, "Well, that's awesome," but I'm not surprised. Like, good for
Yeah.
you for like taking a break, but on your end, it was definitely like a total shock, and it wasn't like absolutely like thrilled for you to do that, but it was definitely like, whoa, I can't believe Andy's doing this. So
Well, I think one of the things that was every time we would say what we were doing, people, especially people who are older, um, or had been working a while, or who had that experience, just 9 times out of 10 would tell us, Andy, Karen, I wish I had done something like that
Oh,
when
that's
I was your
interesting. That's
age.
not what I thought you were going to say just now.
That is, and so we expected that everyone would be like, "Oh, that's foolish,"
Yeah,
stuff like that.
that's what I was
So many,
expecting you to
and
say.
really, the older people get, the more that I
Yeah,
would hear, "Gosh, that is so cool. That is going to be such a blessing for you." And it's funny,
that's super cool.
we told her parents, really quickly. And it took me a while to tell my parents because I was so scared of
Yeah,
what they would say,
yeah, yeah.
because here I am putting off my career, dadgummit, I'm throwing away money and all this stuff, and they were really supportive, and they're like, yeah, that's really good. We wish we would have done something like that when we were young, and I was like, oh. But I mean, people coming to us and saying encouraging things like that to us, of I wish that I would have done that, or that's really cool that you're getting the opportunity to do that, was really helped us feel more comfortable
For
with it,
sure. Yeah.
especially helped Karen feel more comfortable, because I felt comfortable about it from the get-go, as I always do.
Yeah, I think
But
just to briefly
it takes
interrupt, like I think one of the things that is so powerful that you guys did, and like, before purchasing plane ticket or finalizing anything, is just to basically make this commitment. We're going to do that, we're going to take this time, but then to start to tell other people that you're going to do that. Cause like speaking out that goal out loud requires a tremendous amount of courage and also makes it real, because now other people are expecting you to do this thing. So there's almost like it
yeah.
almost has like the reverse effect of like, we better go on this trip because we've told all these people we're gonna do it. So the more people that you tell, the more it like makes the dream a reality. And that's one thing that I've kind of repeated several times on the podcast. And even like going back to like the summit, like anytime you have some big thing that you're like planning on, like just start telling people about it, before you've nailed down very much, because
It locks you in.
it locks you in. It does.
Oh man, and that was part of the reason why we were waiting to tell people,
Yeah.
because, well, we thought, maybe something might happen or something, and the
Yeah.
last thing we want to do is tell people, well, we're taking a sabbatical for a year, and then, well, we're not really, something comes up, I got this job offer, we did that, and I was really hoping that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It worked out really well. And I just, the other thing too is, people would ask me, how can you afford that?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
how
yeah.
can you just afford to shut down your practice? Like, how can you do that? That
And I
doesn't.
think that for listeners, this is like a really, what you're about to say is probably pretty critical, because I think that there would be a lot of self-doubt about this as well. Like,
Oh
can't,
yeah.
how can I do that? I'm sure you were asking this question. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I think this is like a very critical reflection point.
Well, that was a question that we asked ourselves. Well, really, that was a question that my wife asked me. How are we going to do this? Because I'm a dreamer, right?
Yeah.
I always have my head in the clouds, and just thinking about, well, how can I do this? How can I do that? I'm an ideas type of person, and I'm really, really grateful that I married someone. Well, one, I'm really grateful that I married someone who is not an attorney. That was that was really great. But two, I'm really grateful that I married someone who can kind of ask me those questions of, how are we going to do that? Not
Yeah.
in a doubting kind of way, but in a way of, all right, I want you to be realistic
Yeah.
here, because that
Reality
helps
check.
me bring my dreams down to sea level, or at least 25,000 feet, as we are up here in Waynesville. But it was it's an audacious idea, right? To take a year off sabbatical and to go overseas, right? That's a crazy idea. So how are we going to pay for it? Is the first question, and we are very, very fortunate to not have any big debt. We have, just my wife's student loans, and gratefully those were paused for the whole time that we were away, right until the month that we got back. Um, but we didn't have any big debt. Now, I know that some people may have, mortgage payments that they need to take care of. That, everybody's situation is different. For us, we didn't have anything like that, and that just has come from a bunch of different places. But and we had worked really hard. Like I said, I had been grinding for the last few years, those 80-hour work weeks, and coming home late, which is unhealthy, and which is not sustainable. Yeah, I'm glad I did it for a little season, but that's not something I plan on going back to, mainly because my wife would, after I come home, be like, "Oh, there you are. I haven't seen you
Yeah.
in 2 days," and that's not healthy. That's not healthy for a family. So, uh, fortunately, we had some money built up, but right before we left, we had the opportunity basically to purchase some property up here in Haywood County, up in the mountains. And so I got this great idea. Here's how we're going to pay for this whole trip. I'm going to buy a camper. I'm going to put the camper up on that property. We're going to develop it. We're going to get a driveway put in, septic, water, electric, all that stuff. And we are going to rent it out as an Airbnb. It's going to be a great idea. We are going to make more than enough money. We are going to be in the green. It's going to be fantastic. And wouldn't you know it, the best laid plans of mice and men go off agley. So we ended up falling on its face, because there was a whole bunch of stuff that just happened with the property. So we bought this camper, and it has just been sitting for the longest time, and we ended up not having that income. But fortunately, we had a pretty good savings set aside where I didn't have to worry about that. And I had also, I'd just been working hard. So I had a lot, that I was sitting on, but it didn't cost as much as people may think, because people think, vacation, right?
That's what you think. Yeah. Yeah. We're going on a year's long vacation. Yes.
This wasn't really a vacation. And that's the thing. We were traveling, not vacationing. We were not tourists necessarily.
Yeah. And I guess,
I folks keep calling.
Oh, you're good. You're good. It's good to be a busy person.
Yeah. But, that's good.
But yeah, I guess in terms of like what that looked like, what was kind of some of the experience. And again, I don't want to pass over the planning stage of things, but in terms of that lifestyle, I think that, again, just kind of getting outside of the expected norm of like, how would this logistically happen? Again, I think describing what you guys did could open a lot of pathways to, okay, maybe this would be something to look into.
What we wanted to do when we went overseas is not just to be tourists somewhere, because it's really easy to sit on a beach or go hike a mountain and then go back to a hotel or an Airbnb, go to a nice restaurant, go to a coffee shop, maybe get to meet people, but leave with really only kind of a superficial kind of understanding of
that's definitely what it is when you go on vacation. It's a superficial, whatever country you might be visiting, you're getting a very, very non-genuine experience, generally speaking.
And going on vacation is a good thing.
It is. Yeah, it's great.
I'm not anti-vacation.
Yeah.
But for us, we wanted to do something different. And the whole idea was to go somewhere, stay there for a while, as long as we could. And to really kind of get into the community as much as we can. So the way we did that was, there is a platform called workaway.info. It's a really, really, really cool website. Folks who have um, either farms, volunteer organizations, maybe families that need help with their kids, will post online, on this website, Workaway. Hey, we need somebody to come down here to our horse farm in Iceland, or our hostel in Norway or something. Hey, if you we will give you room and board if you work for 15, 20, 30 hours a week. Actually, I think the cap is 25. um, and it's not a platform to get free labor. It's a cultural / work exchange. And there's another platform called Woofing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's like worldwide working in organic farms or something like that. We didn't do that Woofing platform specifically, but we did do that Workaway platform. So before we went to South Africa, we had already um, planned with this farmer and his wife down in South Africa that we were going to stay with them for 5 or 6 weeks. We ended up staying for 6, and we did apiary work. So I had no experience working with bees in my life. I have experience swatting them, but here I am. I've experienced being in court. I've experienced, sitting in an office with a suit and tie on and talking to my clients. And here I was putting on the full bee gear, and going out and going to war every day with these bees in the hot African sun. Oh yeah, that was, but it was priceless, priceless. Getting up really early in the morning and letting the chickens out and eating a little breakfast with the family all around the table, and then getting my boots on and going out there and working, and Karen doing the same thing, and us, working with each other, which we've
Yeah,
never really,
that's super cool part of the experience.
but like working outside
Yes.
in the sun, in the dirt, with these animals, and with these people, right? And people from, I mean, South Africa, they don't call it the Rainbow Nation for nothing. I mean, working with the Afrikaner family that we were with, working with um, the other workers there from other cultures and backgrounds, learning words and languages like Xhosa. And it's so rich of a learning experience. And while we were down there, getting connected with a church down there, making those really, really deep, meaningful relationships with people that we would have never met otherwise. Yeah, it was really, really, really profound. So we worked there on the bee farm. That's what we would kind of jokingly call it. We worked there on the farm for a little over a month, about a month and a half, and then we took a couple weeks just to rent a car and drive around the country. Learned how to drive a stick shift by trial and error, and by the help of a kindly Afrikaans gentleman who, taught me how to do it.
Man, my first car was a stick shift. I haven't had one since, and I really miss it. Like, I would love to.
It's funny. I want one.
Yeah,
I want one really bad.
yeah.
I think that we do ourselves a. This is a total aside, but I think that there's something healthy about having to do a manual transmission.
Oh,
We've
it's
lost
so much
that.
more fun.
But we did that kind of week-long, well, 2-week-long excursion across the country, and then for the second 7 weeks, basically, that we were in South Africa for 3 months. We were over on the Western Cape, the western side of the country, staying with a family who basically gave us an apartment on the back of their home in exchange for us babysitting, more or less, taking care of their kid while they were working. And it was so rewarding, just really being part of that family. for that long and meeting people in the community, going to church, going to uh, going to wineries. Man, the wine down there is incredible. We became and it's cheap too because the exchange rate is so good. We were in
That's
this
funny.
country for 3 months and spent just barely any money at all because, well, we were working for room and board, and then on the weekends and on the days where we had free time, we would, bug off to, whichever winery we could find, or go up to the mountains, go hiking, go down to the coast, see the penguins, go into town, into Cape
That's
Town.
so
It's a
cool.
beautiful city. Things like that, and really barely spending anything because you can spend the equivalent of $10 US and eat the nicest meal with the nicest glass of wine and a nice dessert. Um, and you've spent basically nothing. And so we live like kings,
Yeah,
but
that's
because of
funny.
the economy. And people would always love when we'd show up because they'd be like, American dollars, this is great.
That's awesome.
This is fantastic. But no, and it was honestly, it was a blessing to be able to help them and to, inject, a little tiny bit of life into an economy that needs it. And they're wonderful people down there. It was just everyone you meet is just excellent, excellent folks. And the food is just without peer, in my opinion. Especially the Afrikaners, they can cook. They can cook. Especially you find like an old Afrikaner Oma, like she will cook you the best meal you've ever had. I guarantee it. But no, it all that was to say, it ended up not costing as much as we thought that it was going to cost. And really, I mean,
And I
it's
think part of that
unbelievable.
is just thinking outside the box. I mean, I think when
Yeah.
you're thinking about how to make this work or where you're going to go, and you're starting the research again, I think a lot of these things probably start to come out in terms of the options and opportunities that exist.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, the key fact is like there's it was very much like a realistic dream, like and I think
Oh
that
yeah.
that's where so many people just kind of get to that point of like asking themselves, how am I going to pay for this? And there is just no answer, and it's like, okay, well, I guess that's not really going to be the outcome, or even to kind of like a similar mindset of like, maybe I don't want to go on a sabbatical for a year, but I do recognize like I need to get away with my wife once
Hmm.
every 3 months, or I want to get out of the office and just work on my business, you know, 2 days every quarter. But yeah, like that's not, this question of like, how would I do that? And I think that one of the first things to do it like in either of those situations is just to put it on the calendar, right? Like, again, the more you make that thing real, it by putting it out there, the easier it becomes to do that. Then it's kind of like, okay, question number two, like, how do I pay for this? Or how do I, cover new clients that are coming in? And then maybe the reality check is like, I'm going to have to lose out on 2 days of potential clients in order to take this much needed vacation with my, my bride, my significant other. Like, this is something that I need to make a reality. But again, like I think that just taking those stepping stones as opposed to like immediately stopping at the stuck point, like, how am I going to pay for this? I don't know, but we'll figure it out. That's that mentality can take you uh, a long way. You got to get realistic, but at the same time, I think that we uh, we eliminate too many opportunities just through this kind of like, oh, there's no options there.
And here's one thing that I think one lesson that I've really taken away from this is seeing what I did, right? Or seeing stepping back as an investment,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that's what it is. Stepping back is an investment. I don't care if it's going away like we did, and we were actually only gone for 6 months just because we had to push the thing back for so long, for various very good reasons. But it was the biggest investment in my, not just my practice, in myself as a person, in my
Yes.
family, that I have ever made. I wasn't going to ask you this, Jake, but guess how much it cost us? It just how much we spent. All right, I'm talking airfares, Airbnbs, rental cars, food, gone for 6 months in Germany, South Africa, and everywhere in between. How much do you think we spent?
Before like kind of knowing a little bit about what you guys were doing, I'd have probably said much higher than this, but I'm going to say like $25,000 would be like kind of what I would expect.
It was less than 14.
That's crazy. Yeah, that is. I mean, that's crazy. I would have initially probably said like before, again, like hearing what the setup was, I would have probably said like 50 to $75,000. So again, like, I think that's, for most people, it's like, I need to have, like almost like 2 years worth of like salary savings in order to even consider something, something like this for me. And especially if there's like somebody else now that's like part of the household that's doing this as well, like, this is going to be twice as expensive, like, all of the, if you're going to do this with your kids, or so like you're contemplating taking,
Yeah.
like, I mean, again, it feels like, oh, well, there's just no possible way that we could afford that. So again, like, yeah, I love the kind of mind shatteringness of that figure.
But and here's the thing, that was the best $14,000 I have ever.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even close.
Yeah.
It's not even
Yeah.
close. And I mean, really and truly, just the dividends that has paid in so many ways in my life, and that continues to, and that I trust will, be paid in the future, are just astronomical. And when I think about my business, I
Yes.
mean, I think really and truly that is going to be worth so much. I am going to make that much more and then some from the lessons that I have learned and that I'm able to implement into the way I make money. So yeah, I stepped away from business. I stepped away from potential clients. I had to refer a lot of people out that last year because I just wasn't taking it unless it was something that could be finished up real quick. I left a lot of money on the table, sure. But even that, so worth it. So worth it. I
One thing to just kind of interject, like from a
yeah.
outside view, I think, again, that elasticity of the mind, I think Colin O'Brady talked about like most people living in this zone of comfortable complacency. And I think that the impact that getting out of your comfort zone has in terms of other areas of your life, right? Like, so again, this wasn't a business trip, but coming back from that to your business and basically being like, I did something that most people would think was impossible. And I had a blast doing it, and it became a reality. And, like, I lived it. Like, that was something that, again, probably at the outset, you were thinking to yourself, is this impossible? Can this be done? A lot of doubts. And then you come back and you've done it. And it's like, okay, well, what other,
What's next?
what's next? Yeah. Yeah. What other false like ceilings have I set for myself? And so I think that also, like, again, it's nothing that you're learning necessarily from the culture itself or the work, which, again, I think there's so many amazing lessons that were probably coming out of those things as well, which I'd love to kind of like hear a little bit about. But I think just that like shattering mindset of like, man, I could do a lot of things that I didn't think I could do before.
Yeah. And really and truly, I mean, people always say, well, you can do anything that you set your mind to.
Yes. Yeah.
And in some ways that is kind of a cliche. But it is absolutely true. And you're referencing what Colin was saying. He is absolutely right. We can so often set ceilings and set barriers for ourselves, of just, yeah, I can't do that. That's not possible. And I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah, we
so
all are.
guilty of that. I am really, really guilty of that. But the freedom that comes with, once you punch through that ceiling once, there's a hole and you can see the daylight coming through it. And you're like, well, what if I, reach through a little more? And that's freeing, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a total paradigm shift. And it's I mean, just so many benefits, not just for me. I mean, my wife even, coming over, once we came back, her just talking to me about how much she has benefited from this. And there was one point where she was like, because she had been, she had been really struggling with a lot of health issues before we left, and her just saying, us going on that trip saved my life, was one of the most profound things that I ever heard anyone say, and that just took me aback.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
And really having a conversation on that, of just how it wasn't just me who was benefiting from this. I mean, like, she honestly benefited from it more than I did. And doing things together as a team, and how
Yes.
important that is. And when you have a spouse, right, and you're, in a career, and you have a spouse who has, his or her own, dreams and aspirations, and to come together, and set goals together, and dream big together, and punch through that ceiling together, of limitations that you thought were, solid limitations, that once you've punched through, you realize it's just paper. That's profound. That's profound, because it's not just me; it's two of us.
Yes.
And yeah, that's really cool. So it's kind of like, when they always talk about, like, the astronauts, like, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, those guys that walked on the moon, when they come back and they're like, what do I do with my life? I'm kind of in that place. So I'm like, we're like, all right, what's our next, as Colin Brady says, what's your next Everest?
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, but you know what? And it's been a challenge, to be completely honest, been a challenge to try to formulate what that next Everest is. But I think that's a really good challenge to put yourself through.
And probably,
Oh,
sorry to cut you off, Andy.
No. I was just thinking about goals is a great challenge to have.
Yeah. Well, I think, that question, that he poses is a really powerful question. It's an uncomfortable question, because, I think that's a question that we don't often, think about or spend a lot of time on. And I think for you in particular, it's probably almost like an even more discomforting question, because you kind of like did Everest, like, I mean, in your own way. Like, I mean, that's what that whole kind of planning process and kind of research and courage to tell other people, and then to actually kind of like go do this thing and find the work, and develop all these relationships locally. I mean, there just is so many pieces of that kind of Everest level sabbatical. And so I think, and it's a, when you summit Everest, even though you're putting in a ton of prep work ahead of time, like normally you're on the mountain for, a couple weeks, right? Like, but this is like a big time investment that went into this. So it's not even really comparable on that front, because it's like, this was a true, very big season of your life that went into this whole journey. And so I guess, yeah, I love that question, but I also am kind of curious, like, what is the difference in terms of how you look at your practice now versus, how you looked at your practice to engage with clients. And again, if there's not any that I mean, totally cool. But if there is a difference, like what's the difference in terms of post sabbatical practice?
It has been super healthy for me to have to not just interact with people and build relationships with people from one different culture, but being forced to interact with and build relationships with people from many different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Not just in South Africa, but I'm talking in the Middle East when we were there, Europe, in Germany for a couple months. It was such a benefit to me to have to uh, uh, make and build those relationships with other people who are different from me. Because what do we do as lawyers? We have, because every attorney client relationship is a relationship,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And you have to know how to navigate those relationships with people who are totally different from you. So that has been really helpful. One thing that has been really helpful for me, I think, was just seeing kind of the nature of criminal justice in different countries, right? And the nature of the relationship of law enforcement and the courts and things like that. And being in South Africa really gave more nuance to my thoughts about those things. And, I work in a courtroom every day, in district court and superior court. I work with, judges, officers, probation officers, bailiffs, prosecutors, of course, folks at the jail, every day. So to go to a place like South Africa, where things are totally different, and to be exposed to that and really have to navigate that in my mind, it made me really, really grateful for a lot of the institutions that we have here in the United States. Institutions that I had never really been grateful for on my side of the courtroom, but and also just to just to see the I've always been grateful for the rights that we have, right, constitutionally and otherwise, as American citizens. But to also go to other countries like the United Arab Emirates, where it is a beautiful place. It is a wonderful place. There's a lot of money there. But to know that folks don't necessarily have the same kind of rights there that they have back at home. Criminal defendants don't have the same kind of expectations that they have here, and it's made me really grateful for a lot of things that I wasn't grateful for, and it's made me really and truly see how important it is to protect those rights that we have, and to protect certain institutions that stand between either a lawless anarchy on one end and North Korea on the other end, right? And to see really how in real time watching a country slide on that scale.
Yes. Oh yeah.
From one extreme, really, truly, to another, and to see why is to have to ask the questions. If South Africa is unsafe, why is it unsafe? If the police, some may say, can't be trusted, why can't they be trusted? And then to really ask those questions, because it helps me back home to understand how I think of those things, and how I think of the people in the institutions that I deal with on a daily basis here. I think that was a profoundly helpful exercise that and I think, gosh, I think everybody who does work in the law or government should go around the world and go experience other places and see how they do it, so that they can ask the same questions. It was really beneficial.
Yeah, I'm sure that had like, yeah, just a total perspective shifting impact in terms of again being grateful. And I think that is one of the I guess I'm trying to think of the right word, like something to be on the watch for in terms of our, constant griping. I feel like there's so many times when you go into the lawyer room, and there's just like, all my clients are shitheads, all of the, practice sucks. I'm not making enough money. I'm driving too much. Everybody's out to screw the defense lawyer or the defendant. Like there's nobody treating anybody fair. Like, again, I think it's there are truths to all of those things, but we kind of let the, in a lot of ways, the exception almost become the rule by just kind of collectively kind of, backslapping each other's negativity. Cause it feels good when you're having a bad day to like, to kind of join in on that. The problem is that somebody's always going to be having a bad day.
Of course, it's you to be able to air your grievances amongst a group of your peers. It's so cathartic.
Yeah.
To sit in that back attorney's room, and roll each other's eyes and to say, I can't believe they did that to you. I can't believe they said that to you, and tell you, well, just wait till you hear what such and such said to me. Yeah. Oh, and I am so guilty of that. Yeah. I do that so much. But you want to know what one of the wildest things was? When we went to South Africa and we are spending time with people, making these deep relationships with people who are living in a country that has problems that are, and I don't want to overstate anything, but I don't want to understate it either, that has really, really profound problems. Economic problems, governmental problems. I don't know if you've heard of the concept of load shedding. Have you?
No.
In South Africa, the power only works part of the time, because the government, who controls electricity distribution, has to ration power. Crazy and maybe hard to believe.
Yeah.
South Africa used to have the number one electricity grid, in not just in the developing world or in sub-Saharan Africa, in the world. And in the last 20 years, it has, through many, many factors, just been reduced to a husk of itself, and power has to be rationed. So anywhere from 2 to 7 to even sometimes as much as 11 or 12 hours per day, there is no power. And you have to download an app called Escomse Push, and you have to look and type in your area code and see, here's where I am. Okay, if you want to charge your phone, you got to do it during this hour. And if you want to have internet, okay, we'll have internet during this time. And if so it's crazy. But to listen to how much people complain down there, you wouldn't think that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They were going through all that, and it was so convicting. I have power, and I never have to worry about it. There was one part of the country we were living for a while that was under extreme drought conditions, and there was extreme water rationing. And to have to, worry about, how many times you flush the toilet and how much water that you used when doing dishes and things like that. And then to come here where I can leave the tap on for 3 days straight if I wanted to. And I can, turn the lights on all the time and I don't have to worry about when the Wi-Fi is going out and all that stuff. And to really be convicted about, well, one, how much of a fool I really sound when I complain.
Yes.
And then thinking about just the utility of complaint.
Yeah.
And and the necessity for gratitude. And when I think about how much I have, and look, as attorneys, we are very
We're living the dream.
We are living the dream. We have a lot to complain about, of course, but we have a lot to be grateful for. And I would argue we have a lot more as attorneys in the United States of America. And many of us have, material blessings beyond what so many people, even in this country, have. And I think it is very, very, very important to count those blessings and to remember where they came from, and to not think of yourself so highly. That I know there was actually this quote came from, gosh, I think it was General Whistler at the Freedom Fighter Summit. He said, he quoted, I think it was C.S. Lewis. He said, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yeah, that was powerful. Yeah. And
that was another one of those like paradigm shifting quotes. I'm like, hold on, General Whistler, I need to write this. And I did, and I've had it sitting here on my desk. But we are often tempted, to think of ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
And really, every time we complain, that's what we're doing. We're putting ourselves on a pedestal and yada yada. But to be, especially in South Africa, amongst people who have it worse, right? But who are so much more content with what they have, is really good.
So I guess as we're kind of like, concluding the conversation here, Andy, if you were to give a piece of advice to somebody that is either, feeling this like kind of longing for adventure, this kind of like new, they're thinking, I kind of want to switch, careers from being in the legal, or maybe go into a new practice area, or jump out and start my own office, or I want to, take a 2-week vacation. I haven't taken vacation in 4 years. I want to take a vacation. I want to try to figure out how to get it overnight with my, spouse, on a regular basis. Or on the flip side, they're just feeling burnout. Like, I just need to get a dang break. What would be like the piece of advice for making that dream a reality?
My first advice would be, and the first thing I would recommend anybody to do, at any stage of your career, is to sit back and think in your mind, what is your first priority? What is your first priority? Because the answer to that question is going to inform the whole rest of the process. Because if your first priority, if the number one thing that you want is, the career that you're doing now, and to just keep, working those long hours, and to, keep doing your thing. And if that's your number one priority, then, okay, then it makes sense to do that. But as you go through that list, that ranking of priorities, and you find that your spouse or your children or your family is a higher priority than your work, or higher priority than the work that you are doing right now.
Yeah.
I would suggest putting that priority first, and however that looks. And I would say, um, when it comes to putting your family first and putting your spouse first, and or putting your mental health, before the job that you are doing right now, or your quality of life before the job that you're doing right now. um, I think it behooves anyone to just step away for a little bit if you can, to take that time to step away, whether that be a weekend hike in the woods, whether that means being a 3-day hike in the woods, whether that be a through hike of the Appalachian Trail, or a trip around the world, or um, a new job with legal aid, or something like that. um, I I think the first step is to sit back and ask really what your priorities are. And even if that means sitting down and writing down,
Yes,
here's a
totally
list
think that's
of
awesome. Yeah.
priorities, even
Yeah.
if they're not, graded right there. And then going back and then thinking, well, that one is a higher priority than that one, and that one is a higher priority than that one. And I think another thing too of just sitting back, um, and remembering that that everything you have can be taken from you so quickly,
Yes.
and
Yeah, I can.
it's a gift, and it is you are only given so many days in this world, and those days can go by a lot quicker than you think. And again, it comes down to priorities. How am I going to prioritize those remaining days that I have? And when you ask that question, I think it really puts things in a more clearer light, in a more clearer perspective. And I know that really asking that question really helped me. Really made everything worth it. And I think that's why those older people who I talked to said what they said
Yes.
before
Yep.
we left. It said, I wish I would have done that when I was younger, because they see, there's only so many more days left. There's only 365 days in a year, and who knows how many years there's going to be. And again, it comes down to priorities,
I
right?
love, yeah, I think that's so
Prioritizing.
powerful. Yeah, I it just rings home to me because on like personal experience side of things, I think probably now 4 or 5 years back at I was up at my brother's house over the summertime. My other siblings were there. We were all hanging out together, and my brother and I were having a conversation about this very thing, about like what are our spoken priorities versus like what does our life say that our priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
spoken priorities, it was God, relationship with family, friends, job, like team at the like kind of a what you would probably call like a good hierarchy of priorities.
Yeah.
But in terms of the reality, it was like that was somewhat like completely flipped, and like everything,
Mm-hmm.
family and God were at the bottom of the list. And what came out of this, like we were like, how do we, what would it look like to kind of put God first? And that, and there was, I haven't figured out the answer to that, honestly. Like, I mean, that's not something that like I've got a clear picture of, but one thing that started as a result of that conversation was a weekly Bible study by phone with my siblings that's now gone on for over 4 years. And it's like that never would have happened had we not had that conversation about priorities. And so I think, not only having that, that one kind of like sit down of what are my priorities are, but I think regularly going through what are your priorities, and does your lifestyle schedule, agenda, time, money, is it supporting that list of priorities, or is it
Absolutely.
inversed? So I
And
mean,
it's
I
really
think that's such a
easy to say.
cool thing.
It's so easy to say those things, dude.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say, God and family are my two priorities. But it's like, all right, at the end of the day, you say that God is your number one priority. And this is me speaking to myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So are you going to actually are you going to actually live like that?
Yeah.
And then when are you going to actually trust that God says what he says are you going to trust that God is going to do what he says he will do with you and that he will provide for you, like no matter what? And this was crazy, man. I mean, this is kind of an aside, but we never wanted for anything. When we came back from the trip, I had people knocking down the door at my office. I had been in practice for 6 years. And I never really had people come to my office and knock on the door. And I just had one of those clients, literally, just just at the door now.
Yeah, I saw. I witnessed this. So it did.
And yeah, it's like, yeah, the payment came through. Yeah. I sent you a receipt, but he just wanted to come by and say hello. He was in town. He works in town, and but it was really like we had prayed for God to provide for us, and for us to really make the most out of what He has given us through that circumstance. And boy, howdy, He did. Before I left, I had some really big just cases that came out of nowhere, just walking through the door. A lot of money really quick. I was really cool. I was really grateful for that. And when I came back, I mean, it was wild. 2 days after we were back, my wife was going through the oil change place, and one of the oil change guys recognized her and said, "Hey, you're Andy's wife." Yeah. And he lit up. Well, that means Andy's home. Oh, tell him I gotta hire him. And next thing you know, I had just come back and I had $1,000 in my hand, like literally the next day. and was in court, with my only case, right there, things like that.
Yeah.
That wasn't me. And I can't feel smug like I went out and got that case.
Yeah.
I mean, well, yeah, that guy knew me and I'd done, well for people he knew before. But at the end of the day, that was a gift. That was given to me. And so you can't not be grateful. You can't not be grateful. And, but really thinking about, really, truly, does God got me? Does God got me? And if he says that he has, then it behooves me to trust that. And that's another paradigm shifting thing for me. It takes a lot of the weight off. It takes a whole lot of the weight off. And man, that has opened up. We could have a whole nother podcast on that.
We could. Yeah, no, amen to that, Andy. I just can't think. I mean, I feel like we could keep. There's just so much meat to this. I really appreciate you sharing this story. I really appreciate you, honestly, like taking the courage, having the courage to kind of act on this, I would say divinely inspired impulse to kind of take this time and be a example for us to showcase that, it's not a pipe dream. Like if we need a break, if we want a vacation, if we want a different way, it can be done. You're living proof of that. I really appreciate you sharing that with the audience, and just really enjoyed the conversation.
And I want to say this too to the audience. If you are thinking about something like this and you want to talk about it with me, give me a call. Get in touch with me.
Andy will definitely take the call. He will.
Let's go to lunch. Yeah. Come out here to Waynesville. I know a good place. Sweet onions.
It's a good spot. I love it, Andy. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Jake, as I said right at the beginning, an honor and definitely a pleasure.
If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.